All right, so this is Remakes Reviews. We're going to be talking about Force Majeure and Downhill this episode, and I've got a new guest, Matt.
Hi, my name's Matt. I am a local filmmaker in Portland, Oregon, and I like watching movies.
Nice and simple and straightforward.
Yep.
So let's start with like the plot synopsis of Force Majeure, and then we can compare how Downhill, like what Downhill replicated and didn't replicate.
Yeah.
If you want to take it, since you've seen it more times than I have.
Oh, okay.
It's like I know you have to interrupt me if I describe it.
Okay. No, that's fine. I mean, the plot's pretty straightforward. It's just about a family on a vacation, and there's an avalanche that happens. They're like going skiing, and there's an avalanche that happens. It's a controlled avalanche that they do at those kind of resorts. I've never been there, so I don't actually have experience with it, but it makes sense that they do that. And they thought it was gonna kill them, and it doesn't, but the dad runs away during the thing instead of helping the family. And that's kind of where the plot kicks off, because it kind of delves into the relationship after that event.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the remake generally sticks to that, but takes some creative liberties with the family dynamic and how they resolve their issues.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. I think they're way less subtle in the remake. They spell everything out for you.
Mm-hmm. It felt a lot more aggressive to me, and at times very toxic.
Yeah, one of the notes that I wrote for Downhill specifically was American kids, American energy, no attention.
Right. So let's talk about Force Majeure, because you like that one, and I'll just come out and say that I actually preferred the remake, which is, I think, a first for this.
Oh, okay.
For this podcast.
I'm going to spend this.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to change your mind.
I am 100% sure it's mostly casting, because I'm a sucker for anything Will Ferrell and Julia Louis-Dreyfus will do. So I already went into it knowing like, oh, I'm going to enjoy the crap out of this. It just, as many stupid moments as there are and things that made me be like, why'd you do that?
Right.
I still ultimately was like, it was fun. Also, it was shorter, which is good for my attention span.
Apparently, she was the one who bought the rights to it. It started with her getting the remake. Yeah, she bought the rights to get the remake, and then everybody else came on board after that, which I thought was interesting.
The only real qualm I have is that it premiered at Sundance, and I find it like really irksome when movies that have big budgets, well-known directors, and like well-known super celebrities, are at the helm. Like Sundance still to me is that indie haven, but it's not anymore.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, it came out of Searchlight, which was the first reason why I did not like this movie, because it was the first time I saw the Searchlight logo without Fox, and it made me really sad. But I mean, it was their indie branch for that studio, and if you look at the directors, because it's who directed
it's Nat
it?
Faxon and the guy from Community.
And Jim Rash, yeah. Which they've done a couple things, but the whole movie felt kind of indie as far as like the budget. It didn't look like it had a huge budget outside of Will Ferrell.
Right. Well, I thought the cinematography was fine. I think they have an expensive camera. The location probably was expensive. So I was like, this doesn't really speak indie to me compared to
Sundance.
Hollywood blockbusters.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It felt like
Yeah, so Force Majeure, it's in, I guess, Swedish.
Yes.
French, English, and Norwegian. Which, because I think the like coworker
it's in quite a few.
couple Yeah, which was really interesting. And I recognize that guy. I haven't seen Game of Thrones, so I thought I recognized it, Alexander or something from
Oh yeah, and
the
he actually
redheaded Viking
because
guy.
he was in both. The guy who played
Yeah,
Mats.
yeah, which I thought was cool. But I
Yeah,
thought I recognized him from The Norseman on Netflix, and I had to look it up and be like, oh, I just have seen
it's
enough
just
clips, I
another
guess,
guy who
of Game
looks
of
like that.
Thrones that
Yeah,
yeah, yeah, that
yeah.
I knew his face.
He just looks like a Viking.
Yeah. But yeah, you're right that the original was a lot more subtle on the family dynamic. When Tomas abandons his children, it's also a little bit more comical because he like pushes his kid out of the way so that he can leave the table. And they didn't do that in the remake. He just like, he was alone already by himself on one side of the table. So it makes it easier to escape. But I like that the original, he's like, screw this kid. I'm getting out of here.
And you can kind of see the mom in the background, like grab her son and like kind of like, what are you doing? Yeah, I thought the blocking in that scene in the original was a lot better because it kind of, in the remake, it kind of gave Will Ferrell like a reason to like, there was nothing he could do.
Right.
Yeah, there was nothing he could, there was a whole table between the rest of him and his family. And it's like, it made more sense.
Yeah, but in the original, Tomas pushes his kid out of the way, runs, and then everything is white. I really like how they like shot the original to show, you know,
gorgeous
I
movie.
like the transitions between like the avalanche came down, everything's white, no one can see anything, and then you start to see like the shadows of bodies as the snow settles.
Yeah,
some bodies cool makes it sound like they're dead, but they're not. Yeah, it was a very cool thing.
Yeah,
and
which
they,
you
like, people start walking in.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, like, oh, okay, it is actually fine. As the husband comes back and seems to have no shame or thought that he did anything he shouldn't have done.
Right. Yeah, I was actually like reading some interviews with the director who did the original, Ruben Östlund. I probably didn't pronounce that right, but he was talking a lot about how he wanted this movie to inspire divorce rates, which I think was a joke.
That's funny.
But yeah, it was a lot about the way that after big, giant, tragic experiences, a lot of people do things that they're not proud of later. Specifically, like, I think one of the specific things he talked about was like during a plane jacking or something, that people will do things they're not proud of after the fact. And that's kind of what he wanted to experiment with, and how usually after those kinds of tragic events that a family's put through, the divorce rate goes up after that, which I thought was interesting.
Recovery.
Yeah. You learn something about your partner that you didn't know, and you go, oh, well, maybe not.
You do not like it all.
Yeah.
Yeah. I thought it was cool, or not necessarily cool, but I thought it was a good choice that they had the mother, Ebba, really like, she didn't really seem to know at first that she was really upset about that specific instance. Like, it seemed to kind of simmer until she was like, oh, this is why I'm so upset at you, when she like has a meltdown basically at dinner with their friends. But I think that's understandable when you're like explaining the situation to people you don't really know, and they're like, oh yeah, that really sounds scary and alarming. And your husband's just there like, oh, I didn't see it that way. It's like, oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, that was actually one of the decisions in the remake that I thought was so interesting, that the couple doesn't talk about the event in private until an hour and 11 minutes in. And it's at the very end when Pete comes up and wants to apologize and sincerely tries to apologize for this thing. And they haven't talked in private about this the entire movie. They were going to, and he invites their friends over to kind of like get away from it. But in Force Majeure, they talk about it at the 18-minute mark, that right after the event, they kind of step outside and kind of talk about it. And at first she kind of laughs it off because
Right.
I think it adds more layers to why she's upset by the end, is that not only did he do this, but he won't admit to it, even though they've talked about it in private, not even like to other people. Like, you don't have to admit it to other people, just at least admit it to me. And he still won't do that, which is why I think I thought that extra level like brought a lot more to the frustrations at the end.
I think it's also kind of weird in the remake, and I didn't necessarily like the choice to like have this big blow up in front of the friends as really like the first instance that they're talking about it, and then to bring the kids in to verify what the mother's saying struck me as like, this is not actually a relationship that should recover because you are now using your children as weapons. Whether or not they agree with you, like, they shouldn't be brought into it, I don't think. So I was like, ooh, that's a little dark.
Yeah, it's weird though, because a lot of those moments, the moment where she brings in the kids and kind of, like you said, uses them as weapons. I thought the helicopter scene was a really strange addition with the like,
in the
the kid's missing the glove, or in the new one with the kid missing the glove.
Yes, I was thinking of the drone.
Right. Maybe that's why they put in a helicopter. That was their change. It's just a bigger drone.
That whole scene I thought was unnecessary. Like, why?
For whatever, those two instances though reminded me a lot of my childhood. like reminded me of my parents, and I was like, oh, maybe this is just the difference between American parents and people who aren't parents in America.
Yeah, that could be. It's like, I definitely know my parents yelled all the time when we were brought in. Maybe that's why I was like, I don't like this. They should get a force.
Yeah. I also thought it was strange that, to kind of go off of the American part, that like, for whatever reason, it's a remake of a foreign film and we can't even like pronounce foreign names in this. Like, the guy who she meets says she's going skiing.
Oh yeah.
Like, but she can't say his name. He's like, just call me G. And it's like, we can't even say foreign names in the American movie.
I thought that was a very, I couldn't tell if they were making fun of Americans because we're stupid, but then it's like made by Americans. So
yeah,
it's like, are you insulting the people who are watching your movie?
I think maybe to a point sometimes. Yeah, I think they were. I mean, if the whole thing pandering, I think, was an insult to American audiences, that you can't, that you're looking at, you're taking a film and going, well, they're not going to get it unless we beat them over the head with it.
Right.
Which I thought specifically the cell phone, which I don't think is really a major thing in Force Majeure, but in Downhill, it's constantly brought up. Get off your cell phone. Why are you on your cell phone? So that when the event happens and he grabs his phone, you're already hooked in like, oh, this guy's addicted to his phone. Whereas in Force Majeure, he still grabs his phone, but that's not the major thing.
Right. They like show it briefly in the beginning because he's texting his colleague or something.
Yeah.
But they didn't continually bring it up so that you're waiting with anticipation to be like, when will he take his phone over his family?
Right. Yeah. That's never a major thing, which I thought was
was really interested in the musical motif they use in the original because it didn't feel like it always led to something. So I don't know if I just didn't pick up on like what dramatic scenes it was leading to every time, but some of them I thought like, why are you giving me this musical motif again?
When it would cut away with the big crescendo in the score.
Yeah.
So I don't know specifically. I mean, I thought the music was great in the first one. I thought the score was fantastic. But I was confused the first time I watched it too. I was kind of like, oh, this is really strange how we're like just kind of fading out into something. And then we get this big hit. And I back to the interviews with their director. And I think it complements what he wanted to do with all the cannon fire that also happened during those moments, because pretty much every time they would cut away, you'd hear the cannons fire as well up on the mountains. And he was saying he wanted that to be like the gunfire of marital like war that these two were going through, And so I think that's probably why the score was also so dramatic, was because I think he was trying to instill that sense of like a lot under the surface that you didn't actually
it was very
see.
tense music.
Oh yeah.
But I think I'm used to like how American cinema is made, where if that comes up, then, you know, it leads you into a dramatic scene. But that wasn't the case in the original. So I was like, where are we going with this?
Yeah. I think it's also to say that this movie is billed and marketed as Force Majeure is also called a comedy more than it is a drama, which I think it probably plays to their comedy tropes more than ours, and which is why I'm guessing. I could be completely off base, but
the scene that made me very uncomfortable, and I'm sure it's because watching men cry makes me uncomfortable, is when Tomas finally like breaks down and is unconsolable, but he's realized that he is in fact not the person he thought he was either.
Right.
I think it's interesting. It's a nice moment where like the whole family's kind of coming together and wanting to comfort him. Although the mother's kind of like,
yeah, I thought it was really interesting that it started with him fake crying, and she's like, "No, I'm not taking any of this. You need to actually confront this, or we're not doing this tonight." But I thought it was interesting that he never, even though he admits what he did, he never apologizes. It's I'm a victim too. I'm a victim of what I've done to myself, which I thought was really like I love specifically how this movie, the first one, Force Majeure, breaks down gender roles in the what you would consider the like standard picture perfect family, and how there's the men are supposed to act, they're not supposed to run away, they're supposed to protect, and
be strong.
how they're just and how he's now breaking down about how he can't handle himself, but he also is still unable to apologize for it, which in Downhill he just immediately apologizes and is like, I did these bad things, which I thought was kind of a misunderstanding of how the original was going. But again, it's for a different audience. What do you
I think the remake, go ahead.
No, it's fine. I'm a different question.
Oh, I was going to say, I was completely changing topics anyway.
So
I was going to say, I missed that the remake didn't do the bus scene at the end, because I thought
exactly what I was going to ask about.
Because I thought that was a great scene, and I really prefer movies when they're not like neatly buttoned up or, you know, finished relatively cleanly. So I like that was just another moment of like weird, tense safety issues that the mother again is on top of and sort of gets everyone off the bus. Although the other people seem to just kind of follow suit because people are sheep.
Yeah. I was actually going to ask what you thought of that scene and how you read it. Because the way that I saw that was that was going back to what you would expect from the scene where the mother panicked and ran and left the kids on the bus, and it flipped the avalanche scene. Because now she's the one panicking and running, and she just jumped off the bus first to go and left the kids and the husband, and he was calm. And Matt's, the friend, was the one who like calmed everybody down, like settled everybody down. And even though like at the end, like it's way worse than the avalanche was, like the avalanche was nothing and nothing actually happened but now there's a giant mob of people stuck on a side of a mountain, and who knows when the next car is coming by. But it feels like weirdly okay because the man didn't overreact and the woman did, which is the way we think that situation should go, even though it's way, way worse. Which I thought was interesting.
So I didn't realize that she hopped off the bus without her children.
Yeah.
I missed that completely. I just thought she was like, I'm a concerned passenger. This is not okay. We're all leaving.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, no, I mean, you don't always, nobody sees the same thing. That's the whole thing with
But
movies.
I like your interpretation that it has flipped, because then it does make it more of a clean end and not so like, that was an interesting scene. All right.
Which, yeah. And I think ultimately the idea of that scene is to just spark the conversation, because I think it's presenting throughout the whole movie. Should we depend on the male character to be this supportive? Like, is that his role? Does he have to conform to that? And we're over and over and over told that he is wrong for not doing that. And by the end, we show what it looks like when he does do that. And it's like, well, clearly one looks better than the other, but is that right? Should we have these specific standards for gendered roles? Like, should we even be doing that in the first place? Which I think is, those are the topics that I think Force Majeure brings up way better than Downhill does. I don't think Downhill, I think it just feels. Also, I think
Downhill
the age difference is, I think the age difference is so weird in Downhill. Like, what I thought being a younger couple made more sense to have these littler problems than Will Ferrell, who was
like you would think that they have already gone through some tougher situations.
This isn't the biggest thing that's ever happened to them, but maybe. I mean, they've got young kids still. Like, they got a late start.
Maybe they got married right before those kids, so they still don't know. I'm curious if you think in the original, when Ebba got injured on the slopes and had to be saved by Tomas, I didn't read that as she was faking. I thought like she wasn't actually injured, but I didn't realize it was to like rectify how the father looked in the kid's eyes until the remake. And then I thought, oh, is that what they were trying to do? Although they were really ham-fisted in the remake and we didn't need that over-explanation. But I thought like, oh, now I understand why that scene was in the original.
I do think that it was something along those lines. Do I think it's as cut and dry as they spell it out in the dialogue? Maybe not. But he picks her up and carries her, brings her back to the kids in Force Majeure. And then she realizes, similar in Downhill, that she forgot her skis. And instead of him going back to get them, she just goes back and gets them. So I'm sure she was fine.
Injured her?
I don't think she was injured, because she just walked back to get her skis. So I do think she was like pretending, and I'm sure it was the similar as they spell it out in Downhill, but I don't know that it was as similar as the you and I are not going to be friends forever. I think it was like
that was very dramatic.
I think it was, look, we've come to a mutual understanding, you and I, after you broke down in the hallway. But I think the kids need to have a different way to figure this out.
Which I guess if I had children, I would understand that they would want their parents redeemed.
Yeah.
So your parents are your heroes.
Yeah. I mean, that's what you want as a parent. You want to be that for your kids to look up to. So I thought it was nice that she was giving him that back after abandoning his kid. Specifically, the one who was right next to him.
The other thing that I thought the original did in a more comical manner was the hotel employee being a little creepy, ugly. Yeah. Which I think plays off as more comedic because he doesn't really say anything that I recall. He's just always like there and observing. Yeah.
Where in the remake, thought it was...
I thought
it was just, sorry. I thought it was the funniest. I laugh out loud every time when he's like bawling in this hallway and he's like, okay, we're good. We can go inside. And that's when they get locked out. This guy who's been watching this whole thing is right.
And they ask him for privacy when he's like on a different floor watching them. You shouldn't have a conversation in the hallway if you don't want a potential witness, but their hotel room's so small, where else are they going to go?
Right.
Where in the remake, they like changed that person to like a female front desk agent, I guess, and she was very over the top in, I guess, kind of what I assume is like a stereotype of European party goer.
I guess.
Yeah.
I felt like that character was in a different movie.
Yeah.
It almost feels like they shot her scenes first and then got halfway into production and went, maybe that's not the movie we're making, but we've already got those scenes.
We have the footage. Yeah.
We're not paying for her to come back. So
yeah. The way they changed the mother solo ski day was an odd choice in the remake to like make it this weird sexual thing.
You didn't like that.
Instead of someone just enjoying her alone time, her thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was not a great moment.
I think in my notes, I just wrote why and stop. and then like, really, did we need a fingering bit in the bathroom stall? Like, shit.
It's like, it's a public restroom, but I guess they need a sexual moment. So
like, did you?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it felt unnecessary and just weird. Maybe that's the issue, is that a lot of the scenes in the remake don't really make sense for the remake. Yeah.
Which order did you watch it in? Did you watch
I watched
original
the
first?
And then the remake.
When I first watched it, I watched Downhill first, and then because I was like, oh, Will Ferrell, he hasn't had a great comedy lately. Let's see how this one goes. And I was just like, like I said, I was bummed from the first time I saw the Searchlight logo, and I was like, Fox is dead. It bummed me out from the start. But and then I heard about Force Majeure, and I was like, okay, I got to know where this is actually coming from. And it was just from the cinematography. It felt like Force Majeure feels like a movie that had an idea behind it and passion behind it. And Downhill felt like, well, nobody in America is going to want to read that movie. So what if we make it where they don't got to read it?
Right. Yeah, I would have appreciated if the remake was more subtle, because we can pick up on a lot of things. They don't have to make it as open to interpretation as the original, but you don't need to be like, this is exactly what's happening, please understand.
Yeah. Which I hope Parasite is going to be the one that starts breaking down those boundaries where we don't have to, like, we can remake accept foreign cinema for what it is.
Yes.
We like, and not have to just completely remake. Like, I don't mind remakes if you're going to do something different. Like, I'm interested in the new Saw movie because it seems like Chris, what's his name? Anyway, seems like he's got an interesting take on it, which I'm fine with remakes if you've got an actual idea, like Creed as like a new way to continue the Rocky story. I'm great.
Right.
But to just be like, what if we do it beat for beat, but this time we cast a slapstick actor and we make it to where everything is spelled out for you. And there's no real lesson at the end, because at the end of the day, he can't be a bad guy. That's why we had his dad die. So we gave him an out. We gave him an out.
Yeah, I forgot that they brought that up so much.
Yeah. They just immediately
that was a year
established.
Ago. And they're not like, it was a month prior, so he's still grieving. It's like, some months have passed.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the only thing he has going on.
Yeah. And being addicted to his phone.
Yeah.
But also making fun of people on their phone. Like they're constantly like poking at like social media.
Right.
And,
they got dumb hashtags.
Yeah.
I feel like they did, but still, you're on your phone all the time. I did I don't ever remember his real name, but Gabe from The Office.
Yes. I know who you're talking about.
Did not think I was going to like that casting, because he's like a very specific type of comedy, I think.
Right.
At least how the American audiences are familiar with him. Like, he's very awkward and a little bit neurotic, and it's funny that he is that way. So when I saw he was the colleague, I went, oh, I don't know. But it surprisingly worked out.
Yeah, I felt like that worked well. That was one thing that I thought was missing, was the conversation between that couple that happens afterwards in force majeure of like,
Right.
oh, I'm pretty sure you would do the exact same thing, which is like, well, now I'm not going to be able to sleep. Why do you think these things about me?
Yeah, I like that too, because of course, I think it would be natural that if you learn that your colleague or friend's partner reacted that way, that you would be like, oh, how would my partner act in the same situation?
Yeah.
So I think that's a totally natural thing
to
have experience. And I like that we got to see that in the original. And he was like, when she asked him, like, well, where are your kids now? They're with their mother. And he's like, oh. He's like, so.
And she's just like, well, you're just with some 20-year-old girl. Right. Yeah. It's like, oh man, she's calling you out.
Going straight to the heart. Yeah.
I thought that was great.
That was good.
Which is why I think force majeure is actually just so funny, but because it's a dark comedy, whereas Downhill is a straight, just
it's funny comedy. On Downhill is marketed as a black comedy, but it is not.
Yeah. No, it might want to be.
I think it wants to be.
Even from the intro, you can tell it's a lot goofier. Like just them taking photos, like in the intro the way that they shoot the first one is just incredible. The long takes and everything. And then when you watch Downhill and it's just, there's a cut every 3 seconds and it's like, oh, because we like to click away if it lingers too long. But how in the first one, it felt very much like this is the like picture perfect family taking picture perfect photos. Even when they go through the photos afterwards, like these photos are gorgeous. The kids are gorgeous. Everybody's gorgeous. And in Downhill, they're like, oh, do you want me to make a silly face? And no, I don't.
Right. Yeah. Right. There's no sweet family photo. There's just chaotic.
And then you got
American
these kids
family
that are on Red Bull.
Right.
That are just going way too crazy, which me and my brother were those kids. I know we were.
Your kids on Red Bull.
But
let me check what else I have. That moment that I thought was really funny in the original was like when this like club scene essentially came out of nowhere in the snow.
Yeah.
That was funny that it was just kind of like, oh, what's going on? This is overwhelming for Tomas and he escapes. But in the remake, to like have him and his friend go to this nightclub felt like a weird choice. Like, I get that you want to include that somehow, but I feel like there's a different way to do so.
I almost feel like with the tone of the remake, they should have cut that whole scene in general, because like it felt like the way that we see people drunk in movies all the time, where it's like, oh, it's goofy for a bit and then, oh, it's sad for a bit and it's goofy again. Whereas in the other one, it's aggressive.
Yeah.
It's just so aggressive and it's so violent and people are throwing up and sweating. It sucks.
Right. It's like, that's exactly how it would be. And he's like internally suffering. So it's just a lot to endure.
Yeah. I loved the soundtrack in that scene, and the scene where the lady's like, oh, my friend thinks you're cute. And then like 2 minutes later, it's like, just kidding. It wasn't you.
I really liked that scene in the original. I thought it was more well done.
You keep saying that you really like this thing in the original, but you keep, but you also said you like the,
but I didn't like that there was like, it wasn't as funny to me as the remake was. So like overall, my enjoyment in the latter was more, but I think the details and like the writing in the original is a great template that the remake didn't necessarily do right.
Right.
But still, I laughed a lot.
I see that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. My enjoyment level. Right. It's like, even if he's made so many stupid movies and I'm just like, it's great.
Yeah.
I was thinking though, in terms of like American comedy remakes, there's Dinner for Schmucks is like the remake of a French film.
I've never seen the original.
The original is worlds above the remake, but it just speaks to like the American dynamic of, here's like a nice 90 to 120 minute movie that has a lot of subtle comedic moments and some silence, so you can like be uncomfortable with them. And then the remake that is like a lot more celebrities, a lot more locations, everything's bigger and like in your face and supposedly funnier. And I liked both, but that one is an instance where I'm like the original really had it down. And Dinner for
I might
Schmucks
have to watch that because I haven't seen it. Granted, I haven't seen Dinner for Schmucks since it came out.
Yeah, I rewatched it like a couple years ago when I first thought of this as like a project, and then I didn't do anything with it, and was like, ooh.
Well, I'm glad you're doing something with it because I mean, this was fun, and I think it's a great idea for a podcast.
Yeah. Are there any other key moments that you thought that we missed?
Key moments that we missed. Well, one of the things that because I've only been talking about how great Force Majeure is. There was one moment in Downhill that I really thought was like a neat shot, which was it was kind of early on after the avalanche happened, before they were going to their first dinner or whatever, and like they're walking down the hallway and they see this couple holding hands, and he kind of reaches over to try to hold her hand. And that was a nice, really subtle moment that the original didn't have, that I thought was a nice like nod to the way that the other one was made. And then it was just silly comedy about we're here on a screensaver. There's the background's a screensaver, guys. Which I thought Downhill didn't have any skiing in it, which bummed me out. There was like skiing at the very beginning and kind of at the end. About skiing, there's no skiing. Like they're like, oh man, we need to cut this 2-hour movie down to 90 minutes. How do we do it? Well, we get rid of the skiing. Yeah,
that is the key element of a winter ski resort movie. They did have that toboggan scene, or like it's like a roller coaster type toboggan.
Yeah.
Which I didn't mind. It's just another instance where you see that the dad's not really great.
Yeah.
But we already established that earlier on. So
I literally wrote down, my dad would do that. Which I thought was, that's my dad would have done that. Mm. Oh, I can't remember his name again, but the guy who played Matt's in the original. Yeah. Christopher, and I'm not even going to try his last name.
Yes.
Hivju. I don't know. I tried it.
Yes.
I thought his little cameo in the remake was also another scene that was it. I think I wrote down like, do we really need this? Like, do Americans really need this? And then I wrote down yes, because it feels like every single American in the audience would be like, well, why don't you go complain? Why didn't they go and complain? Right. Which it's like, and then it's like, oh, there were signs everywhere. And it's like, yeah, I saw signs everywhere. It's like, we're still going to complain.
Mm-hmm. Right. Because I'm a lawyer. I found that scene really amusing. Also, just because having watched the original and then the remake to go, oh, he's in both.
Yeah.
Which is nice. But I like that he's just very carefree and like, this isn't America. Why are you?
Yeah, he got to play more of his Game of Thrones type character in that, which I think is also for American audiences. They were like, oh, play that character.
But, I see. It's like, I have no frame of reference for his personality on that show.
Yeah, he's definitely one of the most lively as far as personalities go on that show.
I thought that was a fun scene. Like, could it have been excluded? Probably, but was it fun anyway? Yes.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's I don't know. It's not my style of humor, I don't think. I think Will Ferrell's had a lot more misses lately than he's had hits for me. I never watched what was the Holmes and Watson that they did with.
Me neither.
I heard so many bad things about it, and I got sad.
Who's the co-star in that? What's his name? Something.
Was it John C. Reilly?
Yes.
John C. Reilly.
Yeah, he's very hit and miss for me, and I think as they've both become older, like Step Brothers was funny, but you can't really keep that going as you age,
right?
Because it's like the same issue I have with It's Always Sunny is that like after a certain number of years, you can't really be doing the same type of like mean comedy.
Yeah, I've never seen Always Sunny.
Oh, Well, I
I
would say
haven't
you're
watched a
missing out,
single
but it's
second
like
of it.
I'm not sure what audience it's for. Like I'm still watching it,
Yeah.
and I'm like mad that they're still
Yeah.
making it. It's like I'm gonna keep watching it until you guys are done making it, but I'm enjoying it far less now because they're not like dumb 30 somethings; they're dumb 40 somethings, and there should have been some growth. So I think it's harder to watch the same type of character like Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly often play without having some sort of more growth or depth or something.
I think John C. Reilly's kind of gotten out of that a little better. He's playing in Guardians of the Galaxy. He was not as slapstick. He was in the Kong movie that came out a few years back, Skull Island, which I thought he did really well in.
I feel like I saw that, but did not. Is that the one directed by the Lord of the Rings director?
No, that was the 2005 one.
Oh, okay. So then I don't think I've seen Skull Island. I think the last King Kong I saw was that. There's a lot of King Kong.
Yeah. But anyway, that's not what we're talking about. Nope. We're not talking about those remakes.
Nope. Overall, I think if you're someone that likes movies, I would probably watch both.
I would watch Force Majeure and just be happy with your life that you haven't seen Downhill. I would, but I mean, to your point, Downhill's not really my kind of. I feel like it's very pandering humor, which it just kind of bums me out a little bit because I think it's lazy most times.
Yeah.
But it's
like
also it is goofy
entertainment.
It's 86 minutes long. Like, what are you losing?
Right.
So if it's late at night.
And you still enjoy pretty dumb comedies, you're going to like Downhill.
Yeah. Yep, I would agree. But I mean, Force Majeure, I think Force Majeure got nominated for Best Foreign Film back when it came out.
Really?
Yeah. I think it was, I can't remember what movie it went up against that won.
Oh, it was selected for Best Foreign Language Film at the 87th Academy Awards.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Oh, but it was not a nominee.
Oh, it wasn't? Okay.
It was nominated
It was just an entry.
Best Foreign Language at the Golden Globes.
Well, that's good.
Almost got 2 nominations.
So it's a good movie.
Yeah.
If you are someone who lives in Hollywood and votes on these things. Right.
Yeah. Or if you don't like having everything handed to you.
Yeah, it is. It's also a slow burn. It's very slow. It's gorgeous, but the long shots are not there with heavy blocking. You watch people lay in bed a lot for a while.
And ski.
But yeah. And ski. They do ski. They actually ski. If you want to see people ski, watch Force Majeure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Any final thoughts?
I mean, I could talk about Force Majeure all day, but I think we hit a lot of the major topics. So no, I think I'm okay. I got everything out that I wanted to get out.
I'll be.
But I'm glad you like those movies, though. I'm glad you like the movies, though. That's what I've been trying to get someone to watch these movies so I could talk to someone about it forever. So
yeah, I was surprised to find that I enjoyed the remake more, but I think it is just because of like the type of comedy I'm more drawn to. Yeah. But typically I always appreciate the originals.
Yeah.
And there's always something that the remake could have done better.
Yeah. I mean, there's there's always something that the original could have done better too. So, I mean, that's the whole point of remakes. I guess they do remake like what are considered masterpieces.
Spider-Man. Oh, I was going to say they remake Spider-Man like every 2 years.
Oh, yeah, no. Well, that's because it's about a little kid and little kids grow up quick.
Right, yeah, I guess.
You can't have a 14-year-old for very long.
No, I guess has anyone tried to remake Citizen Kane?
No, but they just made Mank, the Fincher movie that's about the making of Citizen Kane, which is I think is as close as you're ever going to get to remaking that movie. But not to shame myself in the film community, but I don't think Citizen Kane's a great movie.
I understand why it's a classic, but when people say it's a favorite film, I think they're lying.
I hope they're lying. I think it's the same with 2001.
It's like for the time, I understand.
Yeah.
But other films have come out since then.
I hope other films have come out that are better. I hope we didn't peak back in the 1920s.
Right.
I think that's really sad if we peaked in the 1920s.
When we're still learning how to use film.
Yeah. Like, oh, it'll never get better than this. It's like, well, that's sad. It's like cave paintings are the top paintings ever.
That's like a very hipster way to think of things, right? It's like cave paintings were the original art.
Yeah.
You can't get past that.
Oh no. Now it's gonna become a thing though. You're gonna put it on the internet.
We'll make it a thing.
A thing. Oh good.
Right. We'll be memeable.
Good.
Well, with that said, like if where can people find you online, Matt?
Oh, I've got a website. It's real, spelled like a movie, realmattmiller.com. That's got all of my short films, and I write stupid reviews about movies, basically so I can learn how to talk about movies. I'm not a critic. I just like movies.
It's fun to do. I do it sometimes too. Just like it hones your brain muscle and it gets you thinking about movies in a way that you don't always think about them. Yeah.
So, but yeah, that's where you can find me, and I've got little things on there. So yeah.
Nice.
But this was fun. This was really fun.
Films. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for joining me.